Few actors ever embodied the spirit of the American West quite like Dale Robertson. Tough, self-reliant, and quietly noble, he wasn't just a man who played cowboys, he lived like one. But behind that calm stare and rugged charm was a man whose journey from a small-town boy in Oklahoma to one of television's most respected Western heroes was filled with hardship, patriotism, and resilience. Long before the fame, before the Hollywood lights and cowboy hats, Robertson had already proven his courage on the battlefield. His story is one of strength, chance, and the unmistakable mark of destiny. Dale Lemoyne. Robertson was born on July 14, 1923, in Harrah, Oklahoma, a quiet town surrounded by open plains and dusty trails. Growing up amid the hardships of the Great Depression, he learned early what it meant to work hard and depend on no one but himself. His father was a rancher, and from a young age, Dale was riding horses, mending fences, and facing the realities of rural life. Those formative years in the heartland of America instilled in him the values of honesty, grit, and humility, traits that later defined his acting style and personal code. While other boys dreamed of city life, Dale found his peace in wide-open spaces. He attended local schools, where he was known not just for his athletic ability, but also for his quiet determination. Life in Oklahoma wasn't easy, but it built the kind of man who didn't back down from a challenge. Even before the cameras rolled, Robertson already carried himself like a man from a Western movie. Firm handshake, steady eyes, and a deep respect for fairness. Those who knew him back then often said he seemed like someone destined to stand out, even if no one yet knew how. What no one could have guessed was that his path to fame wouldn't start in a studio, but on the front lines of a world at war. When World War II erupted, Dale didn't hesitate. He enlisted in the United States Army and was assigned to the 322nd Combat Engineer Battalion, later transferring to the 332nd Battalion and eventually serving with the 101st Cavalry. His courage and leadership soon earned him a commission as a second lieutenant. He saw real combat in some of the harshest conditions, displaying the same quiet strength that would later make him famous on screen. Robertson's military service wasn't without sacrifice. He was wounded twice in action and spent time recovering from his injuries. For his bravery, he received several military honors, including the Bronze Star. Yet, what mattered most to him wasn't the medals, but the lessons he learned, discipline, loyalty, and the power of perseverance. His fellow soldiers admired his calm under pressure and his instinct to protect others before himself. Those experiences left a permanent mark on him, shaping his personality and the stoic composure that became his signature trait. Long after he left the battlefield, the soldier's discipline stayed with him, giving his later acting roles a depth and realism that few could match. By the time Dale returned home, he was not just a survivor, he was a hero who had already lived through enough stories to fill a lifetime. Fate had a strange way of finding Dale Robertson. Acting wasn't his dream. It was an accident. While recovering from his war wounds, he decided to have a photograph taken for his mother, something to remind her of home. That single photograph would change everything. It caught the attention of Hollywood talent agents who were constantly searching for fresh faces that embodied strength, masculinity, and authenticity. And Dale had all three in abundance. He was soon invited to audition for small parts. And though he had no formal acting training, he carried a natural charisma that couldn't be taught. His rough-around-the-edges charm, deep voice, and rugged good looks made casting directors take notice. By the late 1940s, Dale was appearing in bit roles across several films, quietly building his way into the industry. Unlike many others chasing fame, Robertson didn't rely on glitz or drama. He was grounded, treating acting as an honest day's work, rather than a path to celebrity. It was this humility and naturalism that made him stand out in an industry often filled with pretense. And soon, the man who never planned to be an actor was about to become one of television's most enduring Western legends. Dale Robertson's true rise to fame came with the television series Tales of Wells, Fargo, which aired from 1957 to 1962. In the show, He played Special Agent Jim Hardy, a character who embodied everything viewers loved about the Old West: bravery, fairness, and a strong sense of justice. Unlike many actors who had to fake their horsemanship or toughness, Dale brought it naturally. Every ride, every stare, every word felt authentic. Audiences immediately connected with him. Tales of Wells Fargo became one of television's most beloved westerns, turning Robertson into a household name. His portrayal of Hardy wasn't loud or boastful. It was quiet, commanding, and full of moral conviction. He didn't just play the part of a hero. He represented what people wished they could be: strong, honest, and unafraid to do what's right. The show's success made him a staple of the Western genre. Dale wasn't just acting. He was living the code he had grown up with. His cowboy characters carried integrity and strength, not arrogance or flash. And it was this authenticity that set him apart from others in Hollywood's golden age of westerns. During this period, he also appeared in films like Return of the Texan, 1952, Sitting Bull, 1954, and Dakota Incident, 1956, each solidifying his reputation as a dependable, commanding presence. Whether on horseback or behind a badge, Robertson had found his place, and the West had found its perfect leading man. After Tales of Wells Fargo, Robertson continued to build a diverse and successful career, proving he was far more than a one-show wonder. He headlined Iron Horse, 1966-1968, a Western television series where he played a man determined to complete a railroad his father had started. The role again reflected his values: persistence, honor, and courage, traits his audience had come to expect and admire. In 1964, he appeared in Law of the Lawless, reaffirming his deep connection to the Western tradition. But Robertson was never content to stay in one lane. In 1965, he lent his voice to an animated film, The Man from Button Willow, showing he could adapt to new storytelling forms while staying true to his cowboy spirit. A year later, he appeared in the crime drama The One-Eyed Soldiers, 1966, filmed in Europe, a bold move that displayed his range beyond the dusty trails of America. In 1968, Dale took on a new kind of challenge, hosting the long-running series Death Valley Days. As host, he introduced and narrated stories about America's frontier history, adding warmth and gravitas to each episode. His storytelling voice was steady and familiar, like a trusted old friend guiding viewers through the past. The 1970s brought new opportunities. Robertson portrayed real-life FBI agent Melvin Purvis in Melvin Purvis, G-Man, 1974, and the Kansas City Massacre, 1975. Both roles showed a more intense urban side of his acting, far from the open plains but equally commanding. Even as Hollywood's tastes changed, Dale remained relevant. His screen presence, voice, and moral authority never went out of style. By the time the Western faded from television, Robertson had already carved a legacy that went beyond the genre itself. He had become a symbol of timeless American character. In the early 1980s, Dale Robertson reinvented himself once again. In 1981, he joined the first season of Dynasty, playing Walter Lancashire, a role that introduced him to younger audiences and proved his versatility. Although his time on the series was brief, it showed that his talent extended far beyond the Western frontier. 2 years later, he appeared in the TV pilot Big John, 1983, once again portraying a larger-than-life figure, something he did effortlessly. But it was in 1987 that Robertson found another memorable role in the NBC drama J.J. Starbuck, as J.J., a wealthy Texan who traded his fortune to help others solve crimes. Dale once again played the kind of character that resonated deeply with audiences: moral, wise, and unpretentious. The show had a short run, but his performance left a lasting impression. Behind the stoic cowboy image was a man who lived a life full of love, heartbreak, and resilience. Dale Robertson married 4 times, each union marking a different chapter in his journey. His first marriage, in 1951, was to Frederica Jacqueline Wilson. The two shared a daughter before their divorce in 1956. Though the marriage ended, fatherhood became one of his proudest roles. That same year, he married actress Mary Murphy. known for her performance opposite Marlon Brando in The Wild One, 1953. Their marriage, however, was short-lived and annulled within months, a reminder of how demanding Hollywood life could be. In 1959, Dale found a more lasting partnership with Lula Mae Robertson, with whom he had 2 daughters. Their marriage lasted nearly 18 years, through some of the busiest seasons of his career. Despite fame and travel, he always prioritized his children, often mentioning in interviews that family meant more to him than stardom. His 4th and final marriage was to Susan Robbins in 1980, a partnership that lasted 33 years, until his passing in 2013. Those who knew them said Susan brought him peace and stability in his later years, something the rugged cowboy had long earned. Dale Robertson passed away in 2013, leaving behind a legacy that stretched across 5 decades of American entertainment. To his fans, he wasn't just another actor. He was the living embodiment of the Western spirit. His calm strength, quiet dignity, and genuine nature made him unforgettable. Even as the genre faded, his work continued to inspire. Dale Robertson stood for something rare: authenticity, courage, and integrity, qualities that defined both the man and the many heroes he brought to life on screen. Dale Robertson was known not only for the roles he played, but for the unwavering principles that guided his life. In a business often driven by ego and ambition, he remained remarkably humble. Friends and colleagues frequently described him as a man of few words but deep conviction. He valued hard work, loyalty, and honesty, traits rooted in his Oklahoma upbringing and military service. He often said that success meant nothing if a man couldn't look himself in the mirror at the end of the day. Fame for him was never the goal. It was simply a byproduct of doing something well. Even at the height of his popularity, Dale stayed grounded. He refused to play characters that lacked moral purpose, believing that every role should represent something true and honorable. Those who worked with him admired his professionalism. He arrived on set early, treated crew members with respect, and expected the same from others. He never chased trends or tried to reinvent himself for attention. He simply remained Dale Robertson, the same man who had once tended horses in Oklahoma. His quiet dignity made him stand out in Hollywood's golden age, a time when many sought the spotlight for its own sake. To him, acting was about storytelling, giving life to ordinary men who did extraordinary things. And in that sense, Dale Robertson's greatest role may not have been on screen at all, but in the way he lived every day with integrity and strength. The Western genre owes much of its identity to men like Dale Robertson. At a time when cowboy stories filled the airwaves, it was easy for the genre to fall into stereotypes: the reckless gunslinger, the exaggerated outlaw, the shallow hero. But Dale's performances brought depth and humanity to the cowboy figure. He played men who were tough yet thoughtful, strong yet compassionate, heroes who didn't just draw their guns but stood up for what was right. In Tales of Wells Fargo, he redefined the television cowboy, transforming him from a caricature into a believable human being. His portrayal of Jim Hardy set a new standard, a man who could be fierce in battle yet gentle in spirit. This authenticity became a blueprint for later Western stars who sought to capture that same balance between toughness and tenderness. Robertson's commitment to realism also influenced the direction of Western storytelling. He insisted on performing many of his own riding scenes and treated the horses on set with the same respect he gave his fellow actors. His approach inspired a wave of productions that valued truth over theatrics. Even after the golden era of Westerns faded, modern shows and films continued to borrow from his style. The moral clarity and emotional restraint seen in later works, from Lonesome Dove to Yellowstone, trace their roots to pioneers like Robertson. To many, Dale represented the last true cowboy, not the gun-twirling outlaw, but the man of principle, the guardian of old values in a changing world. And though decades have passed, the image of him riding across the plains, calm and commanding, remains one of the most enduring symbols of American television. While Dale Robertson was widely admired by fans, his relationships within Hollywood were often complex. Known for his independent streak, he didn't play the political games that many others did to climb the ladder. He valued honesty over flattery and wasn't afraid to speak his mind, which earned him both respect and, occasionally, tension with studios. Despite this, many of his co-stars described him as deeply loyal and supportive. He formed lifelong friendships with several of his fellow Western actors, many of whom credited him for his quiet leadership on set. He never sought to outshine others. Instead, he believed every actor had a role to play in telling a good story. There were also times when his straightforward nature clashed with producers who wanted more control over his image. Robertson often resisted attempts to sensationalize his persona, preferring to let his work speak for itself. This uncompromising attitude may have cost him certain roles, but it also preserved his authenticity, something few in Hollywood managed to keep. He shared the screen with many of the greats of his time and was respected even by those who disagreed with him. Directors appreciated his discipline, and younger actors often turned to him for advice. He rarely lectured, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. To his peers, Dale Robertson was a man you could trust, someone who understood that fame was fleeting, but character was forever. To the public, Dale Robertson was the very definition of an American hero. His fans saw in him the reflection of an older, simpler time, when courage meant doing the right thing and a man's word was his bond. Whether in interviews or at public events, he carried himself with humility and warmth. He never behaved like a star. Instead, he seemed like the same honest rancher from Oklahoma who had simply wandered into Hollywood by chance. Robertson avoided scandals, preferring a quiet life outside of the spotlight. He wasn't often seen at lavish parties or gossip columns, and he rarely gave interviews that delved into his private life. When he did speak publicly, he focused on gratitude for his fans, his co-workers, and the opportunities he'd been given. His admirers appreciated that authenticity. They could sense that the man on screen and the man off screen were one and the same. Even decades after his most famous roles, fans would write letters thanking him for representing the kind of hero who stood tall without arrogance. Dale Robertson never tried to be perfect, but he always tried to be real. And in a world where many chased fame at any cost, that made him a rarity. His modesty, charm, and sincerity helped him remain beloved long after his last appearance on television. When Dale Robertson passed away in 2013, tributes poured in from across the entertainment world. Former co-stars, producers, and fans alike remembered him not only as a gifted actor, but as a man of integrity. The Western community, in particular, celebrated his contributions to preserving the authenticity of the genre. Television networks aired reruns of Tales of Wells Fargo, and social media filled with stories from fans who had grown up watching him. His hometown in Oklahoma honored him for representing the state's values of resilience and decency. Western film festivals and fan conventions continue to mention his name with respect, recognizing him as one of the few actors who truly lived the spirit of his roles. Even years after his death, younger generations discovering his work are drawn to the sincerity he brought to the screen. In a world where heroes are often portrayed as complex or flawed, Dale Robertson's legacy reminds audiences that strength and kindness can coexist. His life remains an enduring testament to the timeless appeal of the honest Western hero. In the end, Dale Robertson's story is not just about fame or filmography. It's about a man who stayed true to himself through every chapter of his life. From the dusty fields of Oklahoma to the battlefields of Europe, and finally to the studios of Hollywood, he carried with him the same quiet dignity and moral strength that defined his characters. He was more than just a star of Westerns. He was a living embodiment of their spirit. In every role, he brought a piece of his real self, the soldier, the rancher, the man of principle. His journey stands as a reminder that greatness doesn't come from pretending to be someone else, but from having the courage to remain who you are. Dale Robertson left behind not only a remarkable body of work, but also an example of integrity, perseverance, and humility. And though the West he once rode across may now live mostly on screen, his legacy ensures that its heart and its heroes will never fade.